You ready to do this, Greg?
Let's do this, Jay.
You're listening to The Success Paradigm with your hosts, Jay Atkins and Greg Gray.
All right. So, welcome to the Success Paradigm. So, we're doing something a little different today. We are actually doing what we're calling the Takeaway Remix. And for those of you who have been watching, we've had 11 different guests on so far, and each one of them has really brought a lot of information to the table, a lot of really cool takeaways. In fact, if you've been watching, you know that Jay's only been able to remember or read out loud maybe 2/3 of the takeaways. But we did go back and look at the tape and
Back on
had
script.
someone,
Back
yeah,
on.
right, and transcript. Oh, I'm sorry, I got off. Did I lose
Yeah.
track a little bit? Okay, so the whole idea, the whole idea is for us to talk a little bit about what some of those takeaways were and to talk about how they impacted us and really how we're living into many of those same things and how we are uh, some additional takeaways that we are actually wanting to kind of bring to the table as well when it comes to those the whole idea of the success paradigm and what it really means and how it translates into our real everyday blow by blow work, home life, civic life type of in that sphere and all those spheres. So there's a lot of them here. In fact, good. We were looking and trying to figure out. I don't know what would you say the total count was, Jay, of all the takeaways that we captured here.
I would say it's probably close to 450, 500. I mean, we're gonna take a lot of these and actually write a book from some of the learnings that we've taken from our guests, as well as how we've applied them to our everyday life as well. So this journey is different than I anticipated.
Right.
I've actually enjoyed your company more than I enjoyed doing this with you more than I anticipated.
Here we go. Here we go.
Yeah,
Here we go.
we're going to see some true color this week from you and I.
Absolutely.
So we're going to be able to, the first couple we were a little stiff and getting into the questions, and we're getting better at this. But I think what this does for me selfishly is it inspires me to
Mhm.
be a much better an example for my team and for my family. So all of these things that we're talking about around success and this success paradigm is very unique to each individual, which is what I'm learning. And even to myself, like I'm taking some of these bits and just kind of turning my screws a little bit and saying, hey, what could I do better? So that's what I think we're enjoying. And what we wanted to do is just kind of talk about some of those and how we could help you, Greg and I, drive home a little bit some of these attributes that some of the most successful people that we've had the pleasure of interviewing. So that's what we're going to do today.
And we're going to also add another dimension to this, especially when we do these remixes, because we'll probably do these about every 12 to 18 weeks or so when we've had another a group of guests come through, because we know we're streaming live right now on Jay's page and also on my Facebook page. So if there are questions or comments that you guys want to weigh in on, so this gives us a chance to do this live. We'll see how agile we are based on what people put in the comments of either of our Facebook streams. So join the fun. So one of the things right out of the gate, and there were some questions that we asked of everybody. One of my favorites though had to do with what one habit. We asked a lot of people, what one habit would you say or would you recommend to people that you think could really catapult or accelerate people to a level of success that they really seek for themselves and for their families and for their careers. And we got a lot of interesting answers. There was a lot of people that said, a lot of our guests that said some very similar things, but there were a lot of very interesting answers. So I'm just going to tell you that one that jumped out at me probably most often, and I have to, this is begrudgingly giving Jay a little credit here as I move into this first habit, because he's kind of re-energized me around this one, especially as it relates to this book club the Next Level Book Club. person after person after person after person said read. And most of the folks that said it without hesitation. You were listening to it. I mean, in fact, a lot of them, that if they had 2 or 3 habits, one of the first ones they said was read every single day. If you can't find a way to, I think it might have been Charlie that said something like, if you move from one day to the next day knowing exactly the same thing, then you're really setting yourself up not for success but for failure. And so we actually, in our book club, the way that Jay has kind of helped me with this is the one bite at a time. You know, the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And we tell people, you don't have to read a book a week. I don't have those kind of chops. Jay does. He has like 5 books on his desk at any given time. That's because he is a mutant, basically, when it comes to reading. But 15 pages a day, first thing in the morning, can absolutely revolutionize the way you approach your day. So there's the thing that you used to say, Jay, and you still do every once in a while, about the thing about reading a book, because the book takes your ego out of it because you can't argue with the book. So I know that you told people that in our book club. Could you expand on that a little bit? Because I thought that was one of the cooler things I learned from you.
Well, I think one of the things that I've learned about reading and learned about myself is when I'm reading the book, I mean, everybody lives with ego most of the time, because we're surrounded by people. We don't want to look bad. We want to look, different than we actually are. So when you're reading a book and the way I kind of visualize my morning is I'm having a conversation with the author, and he's teaching me, and I'm coachable for that moment. And whenever they point out things that you should work on, when there's no one around and you don't have to worry about what anybody's judging you on, you can honestly have a conversation with yourself and say, that's me. Or I need to work on this, or I need to work on that, or this author is speaking to me right now. So that's what I love about reading. And, I'm in the process of writing a book right now called The Success Psyche. You actually helped me with the title.
Nice title. Beautiful title there.
I gave you credit before you gave yourself credit. So
okay. I won't step on it next time.
So anyways, I'm doing research for this book. What I found from becoming an avid reader, and I got to tell you, Greg, I love the passion. I got chills right now thinking about it. The passion that I hear you talk about reading, and not that you were like some horrible reader, but you did it begrudgingly. You did it because, you knew it was good for you, but it wasn't something that you were this passionate about. So to see that passion and fire come from you around this subject really makes me happy. And it's a new passion for me. It's not something that I've been doing my entire life. I've probably opened up 2,000 books and never finished one because I just didn't have the time. I really didn't enjoy it. I would get on a plane. I'm like, I'm going to read. But the reason I didn't finish books is because I didn't have a destination. So I didn't have a process. I didn't have a system to read the book. And what you talked about is the 15 pages every single day. And I've got my son doing this now. He actually is about to finish The Compound Effect. He's never opened a book because he doesn't like to read. And now, like, he's reading. We were on the boat this weekend. He's reading, and I'm just like, wow, this is awesome. And I said, and when I told him about the 15 pages, he's like, I read for an hour today. And he like rolled his eyes. I was like, don't read for an hour.
Right.
Read 15 pages. And if it's a half page, it still counts. Like, that's exciting. Like when you turn the page, when I first started reading, it was like a half page or a blank page. I was like, that's a page,
Yes.
go to the next page. So I just think, and so in doing the research, less than 1% of the entire world reads a book 7 days a week. Less than 1%. So if you just read 15 pages a day, you're better than 99% of the people on the planet, and you're going to be more educated, and you're going to expand your mind. You're going to have that neuroplasticity to be able to become something great in this world. And that's my inspiration every morning. On top of it, definitely changes my mindset.
Yeah.
When I wake up with anxiety or stress or doubt or anything that's in my mind, and I pick up a book and have a conversation with an author, it changes my whole entire day every single time. So my wife knows that's my process. So I love to hear your passion around the books. And I think if you want to change your life, or you got to change your way. And if you're going to change your way, I think the first thing you can start doing every morning is you could commit to 15 pages. It's 15, 20 minutes. I mean, you can do a lot of things while you read. A lot of things.
So I got to tell you, I saw what you did there, by the way, Jay, because you mentioned reading on a plane and then you said you didn't have a destination and you twisted it back. I saw that and I thought that was awesome.
Right.
So I did. I
I,
did.
I'm in my junior year of Greg Gray University.
That is correct. And we still have online classes for those of you who want to subscribe or jump in. So we've got our first question, which is awesome, from Zuri Rodriguez. And he's asking, what books do you recommend? Because we've been asking all of our guests which books they recommend. So, what have we done? The three we've been asking each
We've
of
been
our guests three. So, okay, so you do one, I'll do one, and then we'll go back and forth. Because otherwise, you'll talk for like a straight hour.
I was
'Cause
thinking the same thing about you.
I- Yes.
The first book is the one that we're currently reading. It's become my favorite book of all time. And I actually did not think, I read the first chapter of this book a long time ago, and that's Think and Grow Rich. I did not think this book was what it was. And I was so pleasantly surprised with Think and Grow Rich. If you have not read Think and Grow Rich, it is not about money, which is so crazy.
Right.
It's
Right.
not just about money. It's about everything on the journey to, if you want money or if you want anything in life. So Think and Grow Rich is my all-time favorite book so far.
A rich life is really what a lot of that's about, and
Mhm.
it's also timeless because what was written like in the 20s or
20s or 30s.
yeah, and you could not tell except for some kind of time or dated references, but you would not be able to tell it is that timeless. So
Yeah, the only other thing is it is very heavily man,
yeah,
driven. That's the only thing. So like my wife's reading it, and I just told her, I said, just put woman in place of man. And don't take it out of context, because back when he wrote it, I mean, that's just the times.
it was
And
the 20s. Yep,
yeah,
yep. So I will tell you though, and I've actually, so my daughter Danielle is just weighed in, so she's watching too. So hello, sweetheart. Uh, I told her about this book like almost right after we started reading it. And for a multitude of reasons, I didn't think I was going to be able to get into a book called The 5 a.m. Club. The idea,
man, I've been impressed.
the idea, I, I almost didn't read it because of the title. I'm not going to lie to you. Just the title itself was enough for me to go,
So I have a
don't know.
question. What time
Okay.
do you normally get up before you read the 5 a.m. Club?
So before,
Yeah.
okay. So I'd say probably around 6:30, maybe, or something like that. 6:30. Yeah. So
I thought you were like 8:30, 9 o'clock guy.
oh no. My office does, come on now. Maybe 7. But here's the point. You're really kind of skewing this. You're making people think it was 7:30. But here's the deal. When I actually started reading the book, and for a couple of reasons, because it does not read like most books read. So it's a story really more than it is a back and forth, footprints on the dance floor. There's a lot of that in it, but it takes you on a story journey. And the idea that I could actually what was it, 66 days or something like that, you're supposed to do this before it actually got there. So I was hoping maybe 21 days, and then like on the 23rd day I could like sleep in or something. But 66 days in a row, getting up at 5 a.m. and not just getting up at 5 a.m., but what to do when you get up at 5 a.m. is very precise in terms of exercise and self-reflection, and then there's growth and all of those types of things. And it honestly completely changed the way my day was started. If you have kids, my kids are all grown up now, but even if you have kids, getting up at 5 a.m., it gives you, there's space that's just for you. And you talked about that because you have a baby girl that you love, like just beyond measure.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But to be able to have that amount of time and then start my day feeling like, I honestly felt like I was, I don't know, like 10 miles ahead of everyone else when I did that. So the 5 a.m. Club was one of my absolute favorites. So back to you. What you got?
I would say that 5 a.m. Club, for people that don't know Greg, I mean, he's a pretty disciplined individual, but the 5 a.m. Club really requires you to be more than disciplined. And I've been, I've traveled with you, and it didn't matter what time we went to bed, you were up at 5 a.m. So the discipline that came along with that book that you've incorporated into your life it's been fun to watch. I mean, it's made it easier for me. So I think always, when you're doing something like the 5 a.m. club, or if you're going to read, it's really a good idea to do it with someone else.
Absolutely.
And have an accountability or call each other in the morning. So I think that's the fun part. And I think to the book club, even us talking about books, if you can get into a book club like ours, or get other people to read the book with you where you can discuss the book, you'll get a lot more out of the book as well, instead of just, reading 250 pages and be like, I finished that book, kind of discussing the book. So I think that's a key element too. So my second most favorite book. Wow, there's just so many. I think The Magic of Thinking Big, just, stretching outside of your mind of thinking, and the next book I'm going to tell you that I really, really liked, I won't give it away, but one of the things he talks about in there is domestication, and how we're, brought up when we're kids and kind of put into a box and told that we can't do things. And The Magic of Thinking Big just kind of gets you out of that box to think outside the box and think a lot bigger and create things. And I've always been a big thinker, but we all have that thing in our subconscious that kind of keeps us down a little bit, and gives us that fear that keeps us crippled from actually doing it as big as we want to do. So I think The Magic of Thinking Big was my second favorite book.
Well, so the funny thing about what you just said, and I think one of the big deals about being in a club, book club, because I could not have done it without a book club. Honestly, I mean, because I knew there was that accountability, and it kind of changed the way I thought about it. Because I knew I was going to be talking to people who were supposed to have read the same pages. But what happens is I tend to think of myself as a big thinker as well. But when you read, and quite frankly, even on these podcasts, I thought I was a big thinker until I started listening to people who were really big thinkers. And I'm thinking, okay, so I wasn't thinking as big as I thought I was. And so, being able to kind of be in the same space and have people read exactly the same words that you read and come up with something a little different is valuable. So my next book, I would say, and these are kind of favorites of mine for a long time, is Good to Great by Jim Collins, which is the only book that I can think of that I've prior to I give my daughter Danielle our books as we go through, but before, it's the only book that I can remember actually gifting to someone. Like, I actually have given Good to Great to like 7 or 8 different people, some fraternity brothers, some people I know in business, some friends. And it's the oddest book because it's a book about research and empirical study, but it doesn't read that way. And it talks about, all these different companies that are in the same basic realm, and how some of them did kind of a slow crawl in terms of growth, and others took completely off. And everything on the surface looks like it's the same about these companies. But what was really different was the leadership of the companies, and just what was consistent about each of these different leaders. They were not big, charismatic men or women. They were not people that had to have their name on the billboard. You wouldn't even know what they did unless you actually asked them. But the way they thought about things, and, the hedgehog effect, and, the whole idea of, who's on the bus, and are they on the right seat on the bus, and the 3 circles, and making sure that the 3 circles intersect, was really powerful stuff. So if you've not read Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, and I will tell you, just like Jay said earlier, one of the things I've learned in the book club is a lot of the reasons that I started books and put them down is because I was not patient with them, because the first 20 or 30 pages did not jump out at me like a Robert Ludlum, Born Supremacy, book. But what I've learned to do is be more patient getting into a book. And in some of the greatest books, there's a lot of you may be reading for 3 or 4 days before you really start hitting your stride. So don't give up on those books. And Good to Great is one of those books I would make that recommendation for. So what do you have, Mr. Atkins?
So my third one, actually, it just happens to be the last two that we read, and the Four Agreements
Hmm.
blew me
Okay.
away. Just because that book and most books are really all about self.
Yeah.
You know what? I had a thought before I get into the Four Agreements. I think one of if I'm analyzing you, Greg, and as a successful person that I admire, um, I would say one of the best attributes that you have is knowing what limits you.
Hmm.
Um, and then the next attribute I think is knowing what to do about it, so that you can get into the game and make sure that you excel in whatever you want to. Like you might not want to do it, but you know it's going to be good for you. And most people that go through that uh, process don't take action, and they usually just stop right there. It's
They
like
get stuck. Yeah.
I
I
don't really
used
wanna
to.
do
Yeah.
it. I don't really feel like it. It's not really something that I wanna do. And, you started off the conversation saying, that's what I like about the book club is other people you like the accountability.
Right.
You know that you need the accountability to be able to do that. And I'm gonna call you out on here right now a little bit. 'Cause
Okay.
the only thing and again, you're a super successful person, but the only other thing that, I need you to add to your life, and I'm gonna put this out in the universe, is, just, daily taking care of that body because I need you to be around at least another 30, 35 years, to impact people's lives, so I
The
just
temple. You
I
want me to
yeah,
take care of
yeah,
the
I
temple?
want you to work on the temple, man. I mean,
Okay.
you take care of the mind, you take care of the soul. I just need you to take care of that temple and make that commitment right now on Facebook Live for your daughter Danielle. I'm gonna try to make you feel real bad, real good right here,
Well,
so
that's
you can
okay.
go ahead and
That's
work
okay. Well,
out.
I carry gauze around with me anyway because when you're cut like this, that's part of what you have to do, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, I know, 'cause you
I can't even say that. I can't even say it and really be anything except silly about it. But you're right. It is one of those things, and it's so. And by the way, talking about accountability partners, this is why this works. What you're watching works because if either of us slides, we immediately raise the flag and say, let's go, whatever it is, family, it can be work, it doesn't matter. So there is an accountability piece to this. I will tell you the four agreements was
Well, I haven't finished that, so you can,
okay.
like, cut
So
me off.
okay, well, which one of the agreements were you
Okay.
talking about? Yeah.
Well, no, just
Let,
I like the 4 agreements because it's agreements with yourself.
right.
Again, I didn't know going into the book that it was necessarily, even keeping your word is really not about keeping your word to other people. It's like keeping your word to yourself. And it's like, God, such a
Hmm.
simple thing, right? But we don't. Most of us don't keep our word to ourselves. We keep our word to other people way easier than we do to ourselves. And, not taking things personally and, just those agreements are really they're hard to live by, and you and I talked about this, like,
Yes.
right, they're great agreements, but to actually live by them every single day, and, he promises and I've seen my life in the last month change by just living into these in my marriage, right?
Hmm.
Not taking things that my wife says or does or doesn't do personally.
Right.
So I just think if you haven't read that book, it's probably the easiest read. You can read that book literally in a week. I mean, it's a fast read, but it will change your life if you actually, let it marinate and let it dig in. So that's my third favorite.
Well, so Cheryl actually just posted something, and uh, it is really a good point about good books because while there are a few books that I read on, but I read them once. So she says that she tries and reads the Four Agreements yearly, and I totally get why that's the case because I tell you, so taking it personally is one that I have a pretty good handle on. The don't make assumptions is the one that is just my Achilles heel. And
I
probably is
do
the
that
case
every
for a
day
lot of
when
people.
I text you and you don't text me back. I'm just like,
Yeah. Well, yeah.
care about me? Like, what's going on?
Well, actually, you should actually take that personally and assume that I don't want to be bothered. But the thing about the assumptions thing is that every time, and the reason I think Cheryl's comment is so on, especially with good books and like the Four Agreements, is I learn how not to. First of all, we make assumptions because somewhere in our mind, it's more efficient to just come to a conclusion about what's going on so you can move to the next step. So it's not just about being lazy, but it's also being, if I know what it is, I'll just deal with it, even if it's not what I think it actually is. And that's the problem. So I learn every time I get another rung up the emotional ladder, I meet this whole group of people who test all of those agreements. And as soon as I think I have it down, I have this weird thing where I want to climb up another rung of the ladder. And the people that I figured out the 4 agreements with never come with you because they don't want to. The people that test you want to test people at the level where they are. When you get to the next level, there's an entirely different group of people that I find myself making assumptions with. I find myself taking things personally. So reading again and again, especially really good books, is all about making sure that you don't forget what you learned. And the good thing is that when you read the book, it doesn't change. So the book teaches you the same way, even though life keeps throwing different stuff at you. And it kind of, to your point, the ego has to come out because you really do I want to argue with the 4 agreements every time I read it, but it's useless because don't make assumptions, don't take things personally, do your best, all of those things. So one of the
Did you just you're going to talk about your favorite book now? So you talked about my favorite book, and
well, that was one of my favorite books.
Okay.
So yeah, so
Okay.
I'm going to need you to pay attention. That's on the remix thing. We do much better when we have like one person that anchors the two of us. So, and that whole tongue out of your mouth thing is really, you're not Michael Jordan. You're Jordan-esque.
Well,
I will say that.
I would beg to differ.
Okay. And you wouldn't beg, you would just differ. I know you. That's
true.
right. So, did you give your third book? Because we got to talk about some other stuff too. It's my turn to do the third.
My third book, and then you took my third book and elaborated.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, that's fair.
So you have a third book. We're all
I have it. Okay. Everybody's waiting to hear it. So, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I will tell you probably around 30 years ago or so, I was in a really, really, really difficult spot. My life had changed in a significant way. I had just gone through a divorce. There was upheaval. I was moving from like a standard, great job at a company that had been around a long time, and I was deciding to become an entrepreneur. So a lot of things were in flux at the time. And I read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And as books go, it probably was the best compass I could have ever had. Because of what you said earlier, Jay, about the fact that it really is a mirror. You're looking at this thing through a mirror and you're like, okay, so do I really seek first to understand, or do I seek first to be understood? Oh crap, I seek first to be understood. That's just what I do as a nature thing. Do I sharpen the saw? Which, by the way, where exercise also lives. Just those 7 habits, and they were so simple and succinct and clear. It was like someone ringing a chime on every one of them. And that book, probably more than any other, set my life on a proper trajectory on where it is right now. I became a better speaker as a result of it. I became a better dad as a result of it. I became a better friend as a result of it. I became a better person because of that book. And so when we had that book was one of the ones we did in the book club. And I just could not wait to talk about it and hear how other people kind of lived and worked through it. But in terms of life changing, that one, I was at a fork in the road in terms of where I was mentally ready to go. And that book put me on a path that has served me well since then.
I think the key to what you're saying, and for everyone listening, reading is a very productive thing to do, but you have to be coachable.
Right.
You have to be open to it. And I think, that moment in your life that you're talking about, there's books that do change people's lives. A lot of books have changed my life in so many different ways, but you got to be open and be coachable. And, for people that can't afford to hire a mentor or have a professional coach right in a second, like a LeBron James or a Tiger Woods or someone that's going to take their game to an all new level, books are a way to do that. And you got to be coachable and you got to be able to digest it, figure out what you got to change in it. And I think that's why you and I have so much success out of it, is because we've always been coachable our entire lives.
Yep.
So I think you got to be coachable. Anna Foch, I don't know if I'm saying her name right. She
Yes.
recommended. I appreciate you recommending that book, Anna, because I just had
Andre.
Andre.
Right.
I'm going to read that with my wife. We read books together, but we've been reading a lot of business books. And I think I've heard, again, that was another one of the 2000 books that I opened, but never.
Ray
Ray.
for short. Yes.
But,
In the masculine. That was the hint. There you go.
But never finished it. So I appreciate you recommending that book, because I'm going to suggest that to my wife tonight, actually, that we should read that book together, because I think, I've heard amazing things about understanding what someone's love language is. So thank you for recommending that.
So we'll have to do that one. So when you do it as a couple, then Melody and I will do it as a couple too.
I wonder if we should put that in our book club. That's probably not a bad idea to put that in our book club, actually. I mean, because that the love languages also have to do with employees and work.
Oh, absolutely.
So you know what? We should do that. I think we'd learn a lot about each other in the book club from that book. So Lola, if you're listening, put that on the list for us to read in the book club next. I think that'd be a great one. Thank you, Ray.
There you go. And by the way, the president and vice president of the book club are also sit before you here on this podcast. Just so.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I'll let you guys determine who is the president and who is the vice president.
If you guys no value out of Greg Gray, at least Ray brought some value to this now. So thank you, Ray.
But you talk coachability, and one of the questions we asked a lot of our guests was around mentors and how they. I am really smooth.
Greg.
Yeah,
wow.
I used to be a DJ. I was doing that was a life.
Yeah, high school quarterback too, but we don't go back that far.
Well, that's true. I guess you had to have some mental acuity to be a quarterback. Okay, all right. So mentors. There were a lot of the guests that we had. It was striking how many of them, because normally the question was posed, well, who is your greatest mentor? And almost all of them said there's been a series of them, either because of the season of their life they were in, or because of what they needed from one mentor that would be different from another mentor. So let's flip that question in on us in terms of mentors, and who are yours, and more importantly, how have they? What's the impact been from a mentor? Because I know you actually invest in mentorship, and a lot of people don't know that, but it's important enough for you to actually find someone and actually make it a formal agreement to even have a mentor. So talk about that.
I'm a true believer in paying professionals that have lots of experience. One, when you pay somebody, they're committed to you, and I can have an expectation. Because my thing is, you can only have expectations from two people that you pay money, because it's a contract, and yourself. So I've had lots of free golf lessons in my life, and I'm still a golfer, because people try to give them to you on the course or on the range, whatever. And I just haven't had the time, or it hasn't been a priority, actually. Golf, whenever people say they don't have time, it's not really been a priority to get a professional coach. But I've had coaching, life coaching and business coaching. And I believe investing in those coaches, because again, I have an expectation that you give me all that you got. So my mentors, I think it's all been depending on the season and what I'm trying to accomplish. So when I first came into the insurance business, I was fortunate enough to meet Laura Harris and Chris Burke. And a lot of times when I have a mentor, I will really just become a leech. I'm going to latch on to you, and I'm going to ask you lots of questions, and then I'm going to figure out if you're going to be a good mentor, and then I'm going to continue my relationship with you. And then, you have mentors that become your best friends, like you. You were a mentor in my life before you even knew you were a mentor. I watched how you moved on a stage, moved through a room after a room, how you interacted with people. So there's many seasons in your life where you need a different person in your life, and what you have to offer to do to most mentors is, one, either work for them for free
Mm.
or work next to them and ask them lots of questions, because most people will answer your questions, and offer to pay them money. Offer to pay them money for their time, because you're going to get the best out of them, because they're going to recognize that you appreciate them as a mentor. So currently, right now, I'm working with my wife and helping her coach people in her business. So I'm learning from her business the best people in the business, and actually, we are spending money to learn from those people, because when you spend money and you learn from people, you speed up your learning process
Mm.
by 1,000, instead of trying to read an entire book, which we do read books, but that's a slower process, which you can digest. But someone that has that experience is going to be the person that's going to teach you the most. So my advice to anybody is, if there are programs out there that you're looking at that cost money, invest in them. And if you're trying to get stuff free on YouTube and online, there's some good content out there, but the best content is going to be from the people that you're paying money from. And this is what I will tell you: most mentors know that most people are not going to execute, so they'll give you as much information when you're paying for it, knowing that you're not going to execute. So when you do pay someone, make sure you execute, and you know get a return on investment.
So, it, so I'm going to give my take on mentors because I've had a couple of different ones, but I just wanted to kind of riff a little bit on what you just said, Jay, because I know this has happened to you and it's happened to me. Uh, I have had the um, distinct privilege to visit like 600 or 700 different cities in this country, 49 states. Only one I've not been to is North Dakota. And the people in South Dakota said, don't worry about it, which was weird. But gotten a chance to speak to tens of thousands of people. And if I had a nickel for every time someone said to me, Greg, I would really love you to be my mentor, and then vanished. It's happened hundreds and hundreds of
Hundreds.
times. And I'm not exaggerating. I mean, hundreds of times that someone says, I would want you, yeah, I would love it if you were meant, and I would give them my phone number, email address, the whole 9 yards, because it was a very earnest ask when people were doing it. And of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that made that approach, maybe 8 people even followed up with a phone call or an email. And of those 8, maybe 3 followed up another time. So when you're choosing mentors, and this is what I was getting from what you were just saying, and that's one of the reasons probably that having money tied to it is meaningful, is uh, if you really want somebody to be a mentor, you kind of have to earn their time in terms of what you're going to do too. Because the people that I consider to be mentors are very busy people. And so they're not going to, chase me down to mentor me. Only 8 followed up
Well,
out of hundreds.
I have a story. So when I hired my first mentor, I was looking for the best in the season of life that I was in, and
Mhm.
the arrows kept pointing back to the same person. And I called this person and I said, I would love for you to be my mentor. And his first response was, I'm too busy and I'm
Mm.
too expensive. And I said, what's your price? And he gave me the number, and I said, where do I send the check? And he was like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah, I'm serious. I've heard you're the best. I want to learn from you, and whatever it costs, I'm gonna make 10 times that. And he was like, all right. He's like, got a couple ground rules. And I said, okay, cool. What are they? And he said, whatever I tell you to do, you do it without question, as long as it's legal. And I said, deal. And I said, I have some ground rules. And he said, what? I said, whenever I call you and I have a question, you answer your phone. And he said, deal. And I said, all right, we got a deal. I'll send a check, FedEx, you'll have it tomorrow. When do we start? And that lets people know you're serious.
Right.
Right. And some people are afraid, even as a mentor. If you're a mentor listening, they're afraid that people are not going to want to do it. And if people don't want to do it, they don't want to spend their money. It's their loss, right? If they don't feel like they can spend, $50,000, $100,000 and turn that into $1 million or $2 million, then they're not going to learn from you anyways, right? People have to put their money where their mouth is and invest in themselves. And if they're not willing to do that, they're not going to make the money. People might say, hey, I don't have that kind of money. You're never going to have that kind of money if you keep thinking like that, right? I mean,
Right.
you have to figure out a way. And I guarantee you, a lot of mentors will let you pay them in payments. Maybe it's not 50,000. Learn how to negotiate. Read books on how to negotiate and figure out how you can get yourself inside with somebody, or go work for free for them. Ask them what they need. Be their executive assistant and say, can I get an hour a day of your time? Be creative and think about how you can get close to that person and help that person grow their business. If you're just thinking about, hey, can you help me? Most mentors they're not going to pay attention to that. But if you go in there and you say, hey, listen, I'm going to help grow your business. If you help me learn your business, then that's a mutual relationship. And guess what? You work for free and you pay him to be there. Guess what kind of mentorship you're going to get?
Dedicated.
Absolutely.
Like internet. So I'm going to go to the other end of the spectrum on mentors, because I have had a number of different ones, because some mentors are right beside us, and we don't embrace them as mentors because they don't tell us what we want to hear. They tell us what we need to hear. So, it's interesting that part of the agreement you had with the mentor that you spoke to was one of the ground rules. And I can totally understand it is, okay, I'm not wasting my time telling you a bunch of stuff and you don't do it.
Mhm.
Because for two reasons. One, because you won't find any value in it as somebody who's being mentored. And two, if you don't find any value and don't do it, then you're going to probably not give me a good billboard review when you're talking to other people.
Correct. My reputation
So,
on the line.
yes, absolutely. So it's a reputation thing. So I will tell you, of the mentors that I had that were not in the paid category, but probably almost as much. So my first one that I would tell you would be my dad. And it was in very small bites, but it was very powerful stuff, because good mentors don't just tell you stuff and then wait for you to come back. They tell you stuff that you have to work out in your own head too. So they'll give you footprints on the dance floor, but they also challenge you to think about why those footsteps are important. So I worked for my father. He was a district manager for Zales Jewelers. And for those of you, I don't know how many of you have ever worked for your parents before, but it's a different kind of experience. I'll have you know, you have to do everything better. You have to show up earlier. You will be made an example of, all those types of things. But what he said to me once has been one of the things that is actually passed through me now to our children. And it's funny how it kind of connects to a little bit to the 4 agreements. His mentorship basically boiled down to this: less than your best is failing. That was it. Less than your best is failing. And I think he kind of knew that I would really be, and I would give that, that's some mentorship I would give to anyone. In fact, I have. Because when you if I tell you, Jay, less than your best is failing, you're the only one who knows whether you're giving your best or not. So he basically kind of just Velcroed this thing on me. And moment by moment, I knew whether I was doing and he didn't say less than the best is failing. He said less than your best is failing. The 4th agreement is always do your best, by the way, in that book, which is why I think it's a wonderful tie-in. One of my other greatest mentors is my wife, who is probably the most straightforward, direct, no holds barred, tell you exactly what she's thinking at any moment in time person I have ever met in my life, other maybe than my mom. There's that old song, I want a girl just like the girl that married dear old dad, that kind of thing. Um, her mentorship really boils down to, because I'm a talker. You probably haven't figured that out. She's not. She boils things down very quickly. And it's like, is it this or that? Because some things are on the spectrum, but are you this or that? Are you going to do this or that? And I start kind of pontificating about all the things. That's not what I asked you. Is it a good idea or a bad idea? Are you going to do it or not? And so her mentorship really comes in terms of clarity uh, and not being afraid to say what you think. I spent a lot of time, and quite frankly, even do now, if I'm honest about it, being careful of what I say and how I say, because I don't know how people are going to see me or how they're going to perceive me. And she's like, that's a waste of time. If you say what you're thinking and it bothers some people, her basic thing is you don't need those people. Which is really hard if you think about it, especially if you created a group of people. You mean all those people, I don't need them if they don't
But it's
see me.
straightforward.
But it is true. And it's one of the things that you do, because I put you in that boat of mentors. Um, there are a number of projects, and most people do not know this, but there's a number of projects that, in fact, with one of our joint ventures now with the ASA, most people don't know that I was so interested in trying to learn from you. You called me from Colombia uh, uh, and said, basically, Greg, I have an idea. There's something I'd like to work with you on. And what did I say to you? Do you remember how that? I know you remember how that call went because you remember
Yeah,
details.
you said just in case we get disconnected, it's a yes. But what do you want to talk about?
Correct. I didn't even know what it was, but I knew that the phone could get disconnected. So I said yes before I even knew what it was. I had zero idea um, because I knew what I would learn, the capacity for what I could learn from working with Jay Atkins. There was no dollars and cents associated with it. Whatever it was going to take, fine. How much ever time it was going to take, fine. Whatever workload that was going to come along with it, fine. I was saying yes to all of that because I knew I would have the opportunity to work shoulder to shoulder with Jay, he says that I'm successful. There's different levels of success, and I knew what he's been able to accomplish in the spheres that he worked in. I was like, whatever it is, you want to you just want to drive. I honestly would have just sat next to him and just listened because I knew that I was going to get so much just from seeing this person operate. And so if you're going to pick a mentor, it was. So one of the people said that was a lot of trust in Jay. Absolutely. But if you know you need a mentor and you know the space you need it in, I wouldn't have done that with just anybody, but I knew what he had accomplished. And as soon as he said the door's open, I was walking through. So and by the way, it's important to do that, not just for me, but it's important for Jay too. Because he told me, and we talked about this before in previous podcasts, that you wanted to be able to work with me on something too. I wanted it to be so matter of fact clear that I was going to do it that you didn't even have to think about trying to convince me or persuade me.
'Cause I was ready to sell you.
Yeah.
Right.
But
I had my best sales cap on. I was like, okay, I'm getting this mug up, and we're gonna do
Right.
something big. And look what's happened. I mean, and we're not done. We're not even scraping the surface. I would tell you, as I'm sitting here listening to you talk about your dad and,
Mhm.
and thinking about some of the podcasts where people talked about their fathers, because a lot of
Mm.
times a father is a mentor. And I will tell you, for my kids, I
Mhm.
think that's the most important job that I have, and
Oh yeah.
that's what I want to be to them. But there's a lot of people out there that didn't have a great father or mother figure as a mentor, and what I want them to know is I didn't either. And this is not to downplay our fathers or mothers. I mean, I went to a class, a course called Landmark
Hmm.
a while ago, and one of the things that I realized is, and recently, if you haven't watched Dads, even if you're a mother or father, Dads on Apple TV, it is a awesome show just about being a dad and the perspective of being a dad and how we process parenting and one of the things that Will Smith hilariously said, he's right before he had his first baby, he was reading a 1,000-page manual on a picture-in-picture television, and his wife said, "My water broke," and he was like, "Huh? What does that mean?" And she was like, "We got to go to the hospital." And so they went to the hospital for 2 or 3 days, and they came back, and they had this new baby in tow, and he looks on the couch, and that 1,000-page manual is laying in the same spot that it was when he darted off the couch, and he just started laughing to himself. He was like, "I have this baby, and I have no instructions whatsoever on what to do with this life." And there's a 1,000-page manual on a picture-in-picture TV, right? And what I learned through Landmark was, this lady was just really hard on her mother and how bad of a mother she was and how bad of a mentor she was to her growing up and not a great example. And the instructor asked her a very, very simple question. She said, "Do you have kids?" And she said, "Yes." And she said, "Oh, okay. Well, clearly when you left the hospital with oh, she said, "How many?" And she said, "3." And she said, "Okay, well, clearly when you left the hospital, they gave you a manual on how to be a mom."
Hmm.
She was like, "No." She's like, "Maybe probably the second child, right? They gave you a manual on the second child." She was like, "No." And she was like, "The third child? Like you had 3 kids and they missed you 3 times giving you that manual on how to be a mom?" And she was like, "There is no manual on how to be a mom or be a mentor or." So, my father gave his best, but he wasn't the best mentor in the world. But as I got older, what I realized was he was my best mentor.
Hmm.
I learned lots of things from him and lots of ways that I wanted to live my life differently. Not that my father was a bad man. He wasn't a criminal. He wasn't into drugs. He wasn't an alcoholic. He just wasn't the best mentor because of his upbringing and how his life went. But it wasn't his fault. I mean, that's what he knew. He didn't have a manual on how to be a father. So for people listening, your mentors that you think that your mother or father are actually not that great, maybe they were great. Maybe they taught you a lot of the things that you really need to know that a great mentor couldn't teach you. So there's always a different way to look at everything in life and process those things instead of being upset or having, angst towards someone because they weren't a great mentor. Think about it in a different way and say, what did I learn? And how did I get better? And how am I better because they weren't as good and maybe not be so critical? So I was just thinking about that in my own life, thinking about your father and how he taught you how to sell and really taught you how to speak. Because when you learn how to sell in a jewelry store and present products to people, you really that was kind of your platform of your gift that you have of speaking to people and getting your point across. So I just wanted to share that because it popped in my head. It wasn't even anything I thought about today, but I think mentors come in all shapes and sizes of when you least expect it.
So let's flip the switch on that then, because with some of the time there were a couple of things that you and I discussed before, because there were so many takeaways that we have had from all these guests that we've had that have come from every
And the cool thing,
corner of
it's all
business.
going to be in the book.
Oh, yes,
So
absolutely.
we're going to elaborate on all of them. So that's
Yes.
the awesome thing.
Yes, that'll be a book I read continuously too. One of the things that we would ask folks, and you were talking about when you were a kid and your parents and your dad, and it reminded me that one of the questions we asked a lot of the guests was, if there was a time machine and you could go back and find your 10-year-old self with what you've lived in your life and what you've discovered throughout your life, what is it that you would tell? What is it you, Jay, would tell 10-year-old Loster Atkins that, what words of wisdom would you get, or just what would you share with him that you think would be important for 10-year-old Jay to know?
Um, I would tell them a couple things. Can I say a couple things?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I would definitely tell them, and I know we've beat this horse, but I wish that someone would have beat this dead horse when I was 10, and that is to read um, every single day of your life. Put whatever you put in is what's going to come out. So I think I wish someone would have said that to me. I wish um, that someone would have told me to um, not let others' opinions affect your way to believe in yourself and go as hard as you possibly can. I didn't learn that till it's probably
Mm,
37, 38, where I was kind of living for other people and trying to be something that I wasn't, not comfortable in my own skin. And I think that's common for men. I mean, we really kind of come into our own around that 35 to 38 age, but I wish someone would have told me, just go. Um, and I think also I would have, I wish someone would have told me not to have expectations of people because
mm,
you're gonna be let down. So I
mm,
wish those 3 things are I think the key to life is living with no expectations, because I think it really ruins relationships when you have expectations and because people can't read your mind, and I think, if you don't have any expectations, then life is a lot better, and if you don't care what people think and you just go your route and you just go all in,
mhm.
you can have whatever you want, and if you read every single day, you'll have the life that you want. So I think those 3 things I wish someone would have told me, but, the hard thing is when you're 10, you're like, "Yeah, right, whatever." But if you were like
Right,
if you could be 10, I'm going to put you at 38, and I'm gonna say, "Okay, this is gonna be you at 38."
right.
So, here's a picture of you at 38 if you do these things, here's a picture of you at 38 if you don't do these things, and you could see your future, I think, you would be open to it.
So uh, it's funny that that question that we asked everybody or a lot of our guests as they were coming through the different podcasts. It I
What
found it. Yeah, what's that?
what about you?
Oh yeah. Well, I'll tell you. When I was asking those questions of our guests, I found myself having to really concentrate on their answer because I kept wanting to try to answer it in my own head. Like, so what would I? So it
That was a
was a
long time ago for you, so
yeah. Well, it was. It was indeed. Um, but I think if I could go back and talk to 10-year-old Greg, there would be pretty much one central message. And the message would be um, so, Greg, here's the deal. You're going to be different than a lot of people.
Mm.
And start being okay with it now. Uh, and because I remember, and of course, all yeah, I mean, a lot of us, especially when we go through high school, it's like, am I the odd person out? Am I in the
So I have
popular
a
club?
question. When
Yeah,
you say different, in
yeah.
what context of different growing up? Because I've heard some of these stories, which have been amazing, to get to know you on some of these trips. But in what context do you feel like you were different and it took some time to embrace it?
I think it's because and this, so it's a little difficult to answer this because it seems like I'm reflecting on me, but I think the most genuine way of saying is that I think, like, for my entire life, I have looked at the same clouds that everybody else looks at, and I've always seen something different in the clouds than other people see.
That's awesome.
And so, but what I did was, if everybody else said they saw a rabbit, I would just say I saw a rabbit. So it wouldn't seem like, if I saw a giraffe, like, what in the hell are you talking about? There's no giraffe there.
To fit
So, yeah, yeah. So I've, you know, my daughter and I, Daniela, we talk about this. We've actually been talking a lot about this summer. The whole idea of what our superpowers are, and which is a fun way of talking about it. It's like, so what is your superpower? What's your superpower? And I've really struggled with that because I've listened to what other people have said, which is what you were talking about a few moments ago, and which is kind of cool because people will attribute superpowers to you and they do it with a compliment. And who doesn't want someone to say nice things about you? So it's like, okay, if you think, for a very long time, it was like, you're a really motivational speaker. And I was like, oh, I'm really motivational speaker. So, that would be, I would embrace it, but I never really felt like it was real. I just felt like that's how I was landing on people. So it was easier just to hug the way I was landing on people. But I will tell you, the best way to describe it is in the Black church. There's and we had a very cool conversation on Courageous Conversations a few weeks back, and in the Black church there is a call and response. So when the pastor is preaching, as a pastor is really working when the congregation speaks back to you. So you'll say something and the congregation will yell something back out. And, and if you're not used to that, it's really kind of alarming because it's like, are they being rude to the pastor when they yell back at him? And so one of the things, preach is one of the things people say. One of the things that people say is make it plain. Make it plain, pastor. So in other words, take all of the fluff away from it and make it so that I can digest it, so that I can feel it and I can understand it. And I think that's one of, if I have a superpower, according to my daughter, that's probably what it is. Come on now, preacher, is what Cheryl said. That's another one of those. There's 1,000 things. And the preacher will say, y'all don't hear me. I wish I had 2 or 3 witnesses up in here and all this kind of stuff. It's just because it's theater. The Black church is also theater. It's faith, but it's theater. But make it plain is the one that I think that I embrace, because a lot of things that seem complex in this world initially don't always feel that complex to me. And so I'll see something and I'll say, well, no, that's just A, B, C, and D. And other people will have like 4 alphabets and 4 Greek alphabets, and just it's A, B, C, and D. And taking complex things and kind of trying to make them simple. One of my favorite quotes actually reminds me of this and kind of drives me is Albert Einstein's quote, and I'm paraphrasing it here, so I may mess it up, is if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that's always been kind of my mantra, is how do we say whatever it is so that we make it plain? And that's that to me, that's a big part of this journey for the success paradigm, is making it plain. Because when we see people at the finish line or we see them in their glory, it just seems like, how in the world did that happen? But what we found out, Jay, is, so what's your biggest habit? Read every day. Wow. Get up early. Wow. Pick a mentor. Wow. They made it plain. And it's been such an exciting journey, because for a lot of people that have been watching these podcasts, including you and I, it has given me some solace to know that doesn't have to be that complicated. Charlie Todd, who was on, and for those of you, if you go back and look, Charlie basically took over a mega business from his dad when he was 27 years old. But one of the things he talked about was take care of your mental health. And he just kept coming back to that. And I was like, and he said it so matter of factly, because we talk about all the stigmas and he's like, no, I see a therapist because I need to see a therapist. And he just made it so accessible. He made the thought so accessible that when he said it, felt like I could reach out and actually touch that thought. So 10-year-old Greg, what I would tell him is, you're going to be different. And you should be okay with that, because it's going to be the case your entire life. So I would have made it plain to 10-year-old Greg. So
We're gonna wrap this up, Greg.
yeah.
I'm gonna ask you one final question.
Oh,
Today, because
okay.
this
And
is
I don't know what it is.
I know.
Yeah.
No.
I just want them to know I have
Well,
no idea.
we ask it on the success paradigm, and I think it's a great place to end.
Okay.
One. So you could leave three things.
Mm-hmm.
Three things that you could leave with Danielle, your grandkids, your grandson, your daughters, everyone on earth that knows you. Three attributes that people should live their life with. What do you want to be known for?
I think I would want, because when you say my kids' names, they just line up in front of me in my head. So that's what makes me pause. I literally can see them standing in front of me, and the grandkids standing in front of me. Is to have the courage to be who you actually are. Because even though it's scary to do that, it is, believe it or not, it's easier to do that than it is to try to be something that somebody else wants you to be. So if you're different, it's kind of the same message, I guess the Greg message is, live into who you are fully, and don't compromise it. Don't compromise it for relationships. And be willing to walk away from things that don't work for you and who you are. So that would be one thing. The other thing would be that I think is a legacy that I'm leaving to my family and my kids and grandkids, is I think it's really important for them to know that they actually can be entrepreneurs. If they find a space that is something that they absolutely love, and for them and for the folks that are listening here, you'll know what it is, because if you won the lottery, you'd still do it for free. That's the thing. So be okay. And I guess the legacy is, I would want them to know that starting your own business is a thing you can actually do. And I'm so excited because all three of my daughters right now, one of them is fully engaged in two different businesses that she's running. Another one is already gearing up for another business. And the third one has actually been talking about starting her own. She's a physical therapist, starting her own PT clinic. But it's not a pipe dream for them because they've seen me do it. So that would be the other thing, is that you actually can, or you can work for a company if you want to, but that's not your only option. And I think the third thing is, in terms of legacy, is laugh every day.
It's good.
Laugh every day.
That's important.
Yes, it is. And if you can't find anything to laugh at, what I find is a mirror helps me.
That's right.
So that would be it.
I just call you.
Yeah, right. You can take. I think it's important to take what you do seriously, but not to take yourself too seriously, because nobody wants to be around people that are, even motivated people.
A great a speaker and an inspirer. We don't like to be called motivators,
right?
Within, but I think that's why you're so great at it, is because you laugh at yourself first, and then people really laugh at themselves, because they're like, you know what, that's me. They can see yourself in them. So,
what about you?
So mine are simple, and I have this conversation right now. I've been doing this every night, probably for 18 months with my daughter. Okay. So I say this before we go to bed every single night to her, and that is, embrace the suck, because most of the time it's going to suck.
Mhm.
If you're doing anything in life, and you're really going to make an accomplishment, it's going to suck. The road's going to be hard. Every professional athlete, every singer, every artist, if you look at their story, it's been a lot of hard roads, and you just got to embrace the suck to be able to get to the other side. So I always tell my daughter, listen, it's going to be tough, it's going to be hard, but you got everything it takes to be whatever you want. So embrace the suck along the way. Even though she doesn't understand everything I'm saying, she's going to understand at some point. The other one is constant and never-ending improvement. Something that I live into every single day. I want to get better every single day of my life, even if it's 1%. When I go to sleep at night, I'm like, how did I get better today? If it's as a father, if it was as a mentor, if it was as a coach, if it's as a friend to my friend Greg Gray, if it's as a mentor to someone on my team. And the last but not least is live with discipline. I think discipline is the key to life. If having the discipline, and what I mean by discipline is doing the things that you don't want to do in the exact moment. So when you don't feel like doing things, have discipline and do it. Like working out, not to throw you under the bus again. Um,
I'm laughing. I'm laughing.
um, so anyways, the those are the three. Just embrace the suck, constant, never-ending improvement, live with discipline. And if that could be on a billboard, that people could just write that down and live those things and understand that, because every day is not going to be great. I mean, right now we're going through COVID-19 and everyone's making excuses for that. And God, I just wish this thing would be over. And I mean, it could be a year, it could be 18 months, it could be 24 months, and you're going to just like wait to live until it's over, or you're going to like enjoy life now with your family and every single day. So that's why I have those three.
Well, it's awesome that you said that, because everybody we've interviewed has really been in the middle of this crisis, and none of them have moaned about it. Almost every single person has said, this is what I have found out, or this is what I've learned about myself, or this is how I've twisted this. Every single person. Cheryl said, as did a couple of people, they stumbled upon today's podcast, and Lola is
Well, on top of
on the spot.
Yeah.
So every Tuesday at 4:30, yes, every Thursday, every Tuesday, you're messing me up here. Every Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we actually do the podcast, and so it will be broadcast live on Jay's page. It'll be broadcast live on my page, but all of the rest of them are archived in Facebook and every place else. So I know.
Yeah, she put the link tree on there.
Yeah,
with all of our podcast platforms, Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud. You can listen to it while you're working out, or you can watch it on YouTube or Facebook. It'll be up there forever and ever and ever. So we appreciate the support. The biggest reason that we do this, I went to a Tony Robbins conference in January, and the question on the first day was, ask yourself what business you're in. And then halfway through the day, Tony Robbins said, now I want you to ask yourself, what business are you really in? And I wrote that down, and then made you think a little bit more. And by the end of the session, he asked the question again, what business are you really in? And, I had a conversation with Greg, and we're in the impact people business. And obviously, there's no advertising on this podcast as of now. We're just doing this to help change people's lives and get these comments from Caviar and S. Lloyd White and Charles Tillman. And I mean, this is why we do it. If we can impact somebody with one nugget a week, that fulfills us. And that's the reason we do this, because we want to learn from other successful people and bring the message to you, and hopefully inspire you, and hopefully impact your life in some little way where you carry it on, and hopefully you read a book and get someone else to read a book. And everything that we talk about, we just want to change lives. And this is a format now that we don't have to be on a television show, we don't have to be on a radio channel. We can use our own platform to help change people's lives, and that's what we hope to do.
Well, we talked about it every week to some degree, is that the word success means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And so selfishly, I would tell you, on behalf of Jay and one of the other reasons we do it is that we get a chance to talk to some really cool people that have accomplished some incredible things, and gotten a chance to hear them make it plain, and make it touchable and accessible. So
yeah, we need to thank them, because I mean, most of these people are super busy people, and they've agreed to get on here and share their why and share their how. And so really there's a big thanks to them because that's who we're really learning from. So great point, Greg.
Well, they are our mentors too. And I think the reason they came on, even though they were really busy people, is that they trusted us with their time. And there is no greater compliment than to trust someone with your time because it's limited. So, and we know those of you who are watching, your time is limited too. So it is awesome that you got a chance that we got a chance to have you hang out with us. And but I have to say this, we also have very cool theme music. I don't know if you guys heard the theme music that we have. We have a beautiful, so this is kind of a cool space to be in too, honestly. So, we don't have 19 million viewers and listeners yet, but the success paradigm is going to get where it needs to go because of people like you. So make sure you spread the word and talk to people about it.
Hey, Lola, if you could real quick before we end the show, Charles asked how he could find the book club. If you could put that up real quick as we go out and we end the show. Also, just it's the Next Level Book Club on Facebook.
Yep. If you search it. Yep. Search Next Level Book Club and it'll bring you right to it. And I happen to know Charles Tillman pretty well, so I'll make sure that I get them hooked up as well.
Well, being that we're giving everybody credit before we end the show today, I have to say to Lola, our producer, our director, our everything on the show, she actually does a phenomenal job of helping us pull this off every week. So without Lola, I don't know that we would be as successful on the success paradigm with this show. So Lola's in the background listening, and I got to give her a big shout out for helping us be able to produce this and make this happen and get this up on all the platforms every single day. So give Lola some love out on Facebook when you see this, because she's actually the one that's making this all come together and happen. So thank you, Lola.
Yeah, also known as Loida Isabel. There you go.
Loida.
All right. Okay. Okay. Cue the music. It's very cue music. Let's hear it.
It was great. It was great. A great podcast with you, Greg.
Awesome. See you next week.